Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Current Affairs Unfiltered. I'm your host, Paige Fullman. So we are off the candidate episodes for the month of April, but if you do have competitive races around you, you have probably seen a lot of endorsements flying around from national organizations. And one of the ones that caught my attention was Citizens Impeachment. They are actively endorsing candidates across the country that are focused and willing to call for impeachment of Trump and make that a priority on day one, which I think is super impressive considering the fact that the current class of representatives and senators that are in Congress right now are unwilling to do so. But Citizens Impeachment did not always start out as this, endorsement platform with that being their main goal. But it seems like we're at the point where that's just what needs to happen. So here to talk about all of that is Keira Havens, who is the executive director of Citizens Impeachment. I'm very, very interested to see what Citizens Impeachment is able to do, especially as the candidates that they've endorsed start to win their primaries, later win the general, and then get into Congress. But we will see. First, a little bit about Keira. Keira Havens is the executive director of Citizens Impeachment, a nonpartisan grassroots movement powered by everyday Americans with a unifying mission to uphold the Constitution of the United States and impeach, convict, and remove officials who violate their oath of office. Citizens Impeachment PAC is Courage for Democracy. They have endorsed more than 100 courage candidates, all of whom have pledged to pursue the impeachment of Donald Trump and his enablers for tyranny, treason, and obstruction of justice. The courage candidates are aligned on a pro-democracy platform that includes anti-corruption, anti-oligarchy, and anti-authoritarian positions, including the abolition of ICE. For a full list of the courage candidates, you can check the show notes. Without further ado, here is my episode with Keira from Citizens Impeachment. Keira, thank you so much for coming on Current Affairs Unfiltered. It is great to have you on.
Yeah, thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for inviting us in and talking about politics with us on this very exciting early midterm moment.
Absolutely. So let's start with, who are you and what is Citizens Impeachment?
Yeah, Citizens Impeachment is a grassroots group. We got started because two people talked on the internet one day. I spoke with someone who was a former Senate staffer, and they started explaining why they were so frustrated that Congress was not doing anything and the powers that Congress actually has to do things. And I did not know about a lot of these powers. And so learning more about it had me thinking and wondering, well, why isn't any action being taken? Most powerful people in the world, and they're just sitting on their hands as this unfit president destroys the Constitution in a variety of very creative ways. And so, we started out thinking that, maybe the Senate would stand up and use its tools to obstruct and slow down the destruction. That did not happen. We still have people voting for nominations and confirming these nominees basically as if business as usual, right?
Right.
And then we turned our attention to the House, and the House's power is impeachment. And so we got together a group of about 1,000 Americans from every single district in the United States. And everybody sent an email at the exact same time so that all of the staffers would call each other up and say, hey, did you get this too? Is this real? And yeah, it was real. And so that was our first actual request for impeachment. We provided an article of impeachment and sent it into all the offices. And one office actually picked it up and started it moving, sent it to the House floor as part of their impeachment resolution later that month.
And out of curiosity, whose office was that?
That was Representative Thanadar's office. So Thanadar is in Michigan 13. And since then, he's been in the news several times for articles of impeachment. He has the very first ones, HRES 353, which is the resolution against Trump. There is 935, which is the resolution against Pete Hegseth, and most recently is 1105, which is the resolution against Bondi. Important distinction there. All of those resolutions have been drafted, they have been filed, but they have not been brought to a vote by this. And that's really the thing that forces people to take a stand on accountability for this administration.
So as you've described, Citizens Impeachment was born out of a lack of urgency and a whole bunch of sitting on their hands and doing nothing. What was the moment where you kind of realized that waiting on the institutions to react was not enough and something new had to be built?
Oh, man. Yeah, the specific turning point. Well, so I'm a veteran and I swore the same oath. I swore the same oath, right, when I was a service member, that every member of Congress swears to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And the number of constitutional violations just kind of occurring repeatedly and consistently was enough for me to say, like, why isn't anybody stopping this, right? On the one hand, you have so many members of Congress just kind of saying, I mean, using the words, this is unconstitutional, this is illegal, this is a violation, this man is unfit, right? Talking about how bad it is. And at no point in time did they say, and this is what I will do, right? That
Right.
action piece is just completely missing. And when we started this in April, this was right about the time that Kilmer Abrego Garcia had his due process rights violated. It is right after a whole bunch of students in Colombia had their free speech, or at Colombia and beyond, had their free speech rights violated for speaking out about Palestine. It was when the craziest tariffs I have ever seen in my entire life got put into play, right? Just doing like some Excel spreadsheet math that makes no sense. Right. And also at this point, like Doge was running rampant, random billionaire guy inserted in the government, and, you know, just a whole bunch of federal workers and I was a scientist in a former life, right? And whole lot of scientific institutions that really shaped my former career just up in smoke.
Right.
And that was enough for me in April of 2025 to be like, we got to do something. And of course, since then, we have just egregious assemblies of men invading American cities. We have unchecked aggression with Venezuela and Iran now twice. And it just keeps escalating because Congress refuses to act.
Right. Well, that's my big frustration is that Democrats seem to love a strongly worded letter. And I'm like,
they do indeed.
Are you going to do literally anything else? Or is this letter kind of the extent of it? And it's frustrating that there's not more creative solutions is the word I'm going to choose to use. Like,
well, and I think it's really important to recognize that the reason there are now more creative solutions is not because they can't do it. It's because they refuse to, right? Like these are extremely powerful people and they have a vast number of resources at their disposal. They can show up and say, hey, team of lawyers, team of researchers, people that do this work for a living, how do I accomplish X? Right? And come up with a plan. And instead it's like me writing up articles of impeachment at my little desk and be like, hey guys, you should do this.
Right. Well, and with the primaries coming up, like my biggest frustration with the races that I'm watching at home in Illinois is there's so many candidates running that are still stuck on this like politics of old. Of like, oh, you know, it'll fix itself on its own. And I'm like, what are we doing?
I would be really curious.
What are we doing?
Yeah, Illinois has a ton of folks running in a lot of crazy ways. I spent a little time in Chicago, but so I didn't like grow up in the Chicago politics, but Chicago has its own brand of politics. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I think there's, you know, you've got Quigley right now. I think he's running in 2 races at the same time.
Yeah. There's lots of people running in 2 races at the same time around here.
Okay.
You'd think that would be illegal, but here we are.
I feel like there's probably a rule somewhere that just doesn't get enforced. But yeah, what has it looked like? I mean, just from where you are, right? Like as you're approaching the midterms, I can talk about how we got involved in the midterms because we didn't start there. But yeah, for you guys as voters in the district, like what are you looking for? What are you hoping
Sometimes it like honestly feels like the race that I'm thinking about specifically is our Senate race. So Dick Durbin, who, as you know, ruined his reputation as he's about to retire by voting for a plethora of Trump's wants and asks. Yeah. He's retiring. It's an open race. And we have Raja Krishnamurthy, who takes a whole bunch of MAGA money and PAC money, formerly took APAC money, maybe still does. He is like the candidate that I'm talking about when I say the politics of old. Like, he's going to get in there and do the same stuff that Durbin did. And I'd like to think that Illinois is smart enough to not vote for that person, because there are a lot of people that were really pissed off with how Dick Durbin kind of went out in this last year. But unfortunately, Raja Krishnamurthy has spent the last decade fundraising for this run. And in a primary, money gets you a long, long way. So that is my fear.
Yep. Yeah.
That he ends up winning because he has $30 million of cash on hand.
Boy, that the sums of money involved in this particular piece of the power grab is kind of astonishing, right? And I feel like Durbin is such an incredibly sad story. As I mentioned, I started out watching the Senate, and a big piece of that was just reading the Senate, the congressional record for the Senate, and over again, Dick Durbin talks about bipartisanship and his friends across the aisle and his colleagues, and it really is the way it used to be. And one thing that I think has just been a complete disservice for everybody, really, right, is this soft pedaling of how bad it actually is and how dire the situation actually is right now, right? Even if everything stopped tomorrow, even if we succeeded and we got impeachment to happen like that within 24 hours and Trump and his enablers were out, we have destroyed institutions that will take decades to recover.
Right.
Period, full stop, right? And the work of that repair and that rebuilding is going to require people that acknowledge something is deeply, deeply broken. And so if you don't have that, it's really difficult for people who are just living their life, right? Like just like trying to get groceries and make sure their kids, can get to school, to register that it's super bad until, of course, you have something like the forcible assembly of men invading your neighborhoods and kidnapping your neighbors. So there's this huge disconnect between the people actually living on the ground who are seeing like ICE show up and terrorize small children walking to school, right? And then these people who are just thinking about, I mean, I haven't met Krishnamurti. I don't know him, right? But when you are showing up with a pile of money and saying, give me that seat, rather than I see the serious problems you, my constituents, are facing. I mean, I just don't know what to call it other than like corruption, you know?
Right. Absolutely. Well, and that's also like, there's a bunch of House seats opened up because a lot of people ended up running for Senate or they retired or whatever it was. And in Congress, what I'm looking at is who's the candidate that's, the next 2 years are a little bit null and void. It's not like we're going to get major pieces of legislation passed. What are these candidates talking about for their vision for the future? Yeah. Are they acknowledging that we're going to have to rebuild? Are they telling people this process is going to suck, but we need to grit through it and rebuild our institutions and whatever?
Yep.
That's what I'm looking for, is who has the who has the plan?
What's the bigger picture, right? Because right now we still have people saying, oh, Trump is bad. And it's like, thanks, guys. We didn't figure that out yet, right? Like, of course, right? Bad. Yeah. But that is not the thing that's going to rebuild. And so I'll just take a little detour and talk about how we actually ended up working with the midterms. Because like I said, this started out just as a citizens advocacy group, right? Like we send emails, we make phone calls. And then we started showing up in meetings, right? We have a promise to all of our members that if you get a meeting with your representative, I will show up in that meeting and I'll make sure it stays on track and talks about impeachment, because staffers generally want you to feel good about the work that the congressperson is already doing and don't really want to take up your specific issues. So it takes a little wrangling to keep them on topic. But yeah, so we did about 40 of these, including a couple of Republicans. We had about two Republicans who showed up and let us talk. And that was kind of what it was. They let us talk and they said, okay. And then we left. But what we heard over and over from all of the Democratic representatives was that they weren't going to do anything. They weren't going to do anything because they were waiting for the midterms. They would usually start out by saying, well, we don't have the votes. And with impeachment, you don't actually need the votes or leadership's permission. It's a question of privilege. You as a representative can just do it if you think it's right. And then they would say, well, just vote for us, get us back in power, and then we'll do this, right? And like part one, if you can't even use the power that you have, like you said, if you're not interested in applying all of that power to stopping this destruction, like why should I trust you with it again? That is a good question, right? But the second piece of it is it's not going to be a question in the midterms unless we force it to be. And so that's why we started talking to candidates. And that's how Courage for Democracy, which is a PAC, was born. Courage for Democracy has the courage candidates, and we started out real simple. If you are willing to stand up and say, if we will impeach day one, we've got articles of impeachment written. I wrote them, right? I will introduce those day one on the floor of Congress. Great, you're in. Like, let's get that label up there. And then we had this exact same realization, right? Like, impeachment is only step one. It is only the beginning of what is a very long process of rebuilding. And so we've started adding other elements to the platform, anti-corruption, anti-oligarch, anti-authoritarian, right? All things that we're going to need to be really aware of and guard against. Pro-democracy, which seems like something we shouldn't have to say, but also is good to have right now. And then the candidates themselves adopted Abolish ICE as a piece of their platform just a couple weeks ago. And so we're treating this as kind of like a pre-Congress Congress, right? Where the candidates are all in conversation with one another and they are deciding what it is that they are going to be representing going forward. But yeah, that's how we ended up at the midterms, because it truly, this is so callous to say, but the impression we have is that the incumbents only care about making sure they stay in their jobs. And so we have to make them afraid that they'll lose their jobs. Otherwise, nothing will change.
Right. Which is why, it's looking at your courage candidates, it's astounding to me how many of them are running against incumbents and how the incumbents are not the courage candidates. They're not willing to stand up and say, yeah, I will impeach.
We have been trying to convince the people with the power, the 435 people with the power, to do this for almost a solid year. It's almost April again.
Right.
And they just refuse.
Right. Well, and that's like you said, it's frustrating to have to hear, well, just wait until the midterms and then we'll fix it on the other side of it. The midterms aren't going to fix everything, because I can already see a future. Well, right. I can already see a future where Democrats take back control of Congress. Maybe we get the Senate and they still do nothing.
And let's be real honest about where we're at in terms of approval of the Democrats. There was just a survey that was they're worse than AI. I think the last number I saw was 18% approval rating. It is dismal. And it is because, in my opinion, the American people hate cowards, almost more than they hate fascists. That's, right. Fascists are bad, but cowards are just gross, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I would be really cautious. This idea that, well, everything is so terrible, so we'll automatically win. Terrible way to play the game, man. And that was one of the kind of rules that we set for ourselves, was that we're not going to ask how much money you've raised. We're not going to ask who's endorsed you or anything like that. We're just going to ask if you're willing to fight. And if you are, all right, come on board.
Right. Absolutely. So on the topic of impeachment, it is often treated as a taboo topic, kind of last resort, doomsday type of thing, and politically risky. Why do you think that fear exists? And what's the cost of avoiding that conversation altogether?
Yeah. This is a great question. It's actually a question that way back in the day, the founders had, right? Well, if we give everybody the tool to remove the head of the government from office, aren't people just going to be using it left and right because it's just a politically motivated football, just kick that guy out, right? Instead, what's happened over the last 250 years is that it's only been used a handful of times. And there is an extremely deep hesitancy to disrupt the order of things, right? And when I say the order of things, I mean the orderly process and transfer of power. You're supposed to wait your turn, right? This is their turn, and now it is your turn for power. And that's kind of how the U.S. has been swinging back and forth for a long time. That is business as usual. That's the pendulum. That's what people are thinking, oh, we will just go back to, right? That no longer applies. That is not the case right now. And it is not hyperbole to say that. The moment that we are in is truly unprecedented. If you read the Declaration of Independence that was written to free the United States from the tyranny of King George, it maps real well onto what is happening right now in the terms of the individual liberties that are being violated, in terms of the unchecked aggression. They map onto each other. And this is why we have the tool of impeachment, right? But if you are 80 years old and you remember Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton, and you are thinking it is 1995 and that your political party will take a hit for pursuing this, and you're thinking about it in terms yourself of politically motivated activity, right? You're going to have a problem because you can't actually see what the issue is. You can't actually recognize that there are constitutional violations, and you're not actually remembering that you have an oath to the Constitution, not to your party, not to the king, right? You have an oath to the Constitution, which is supposed to enshrine these rights. And I really feel like folks have lost sight of that in a very big way.
Right. I think that's the most infuriating part. And there was, I can't remember what the source of it was, but some article came out talking about a Republican who behind closed doors had disagreed with something that Trump was doing, but his wife had said to him, please don't say anything, because he feared, and she feared, the public repercussions and potential death threats and whatever else, whatever harm else could come from standing out publicly and saying something.
Wow.
So he didn't say anything. Like, that's, the Republicans are ruled by fear.
Sure.
And Democrats, I think, are paralyzed by something. I don't know what it is yet, but they seem paralyzed.
And I would say, like, to the Republicans that are ruled by fear, like, I am so sorry, but you can always choose courage. It is not too late. There is a way out, and it is simply deciding to leave. That is that's what it is. It is frustrating, right? Because there is the GOP decided that Trump was its avatar and has molded itself around that. And a lot of folks are kind of just riding that tiger, right? They're hoping they don't get bit by it. The rest of us are getting chewed up out here, but they're going to just like hang on. And we do spend a lot of time with the Democrats, and we do spend a lot of time speaking to the Democratic Party and saying, like, you are supposed to be the opposition, get in gear, man, right? But it is absolutely true. Like, I have heard it more times than I can count now, where the Democrats say, we can't do anything until the Republicans join us. They are ceding leadership to the Republican Party, and that's why we stay stuck. If just look at how dramatically things changed when Thomas Massie started working with Ro Khanna.
Mm-hmm.
One Republican, and we have Nancy Mace, and we have Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene while she was there, right? Who said, you know what? Nope, Epstein is the thing that I don't care what party you are. We are going to handle this, right?
Right.
And when we forced a vote on that, when we actually forced a vote on the Epstein files, there was one guy in Louisiana that decided he was going to be the lone vote against releasing them.
God, I forgot about that guy.
Just one guy. But the other, it was almost unanimous. And that hasn't happened, I don't even know since when, right? If we were to bring articles of impeachment up against Pam Bondi and Donald Trump, you do the same thing, force a vote on it. What we do is we do two things at the same time. One, we force Democrats to own their position, because there are some Democrats that do not want to impeach, right? And two, we force Republicans to decide if they want to go on record to their constituents and they want to vote for protecting Epstein. Nobody wants to do this, right? We know this. We have an example of it. This is the obvious approach, right, to an unaccountable government official and the lackeys that are preventing justice from being served.
Right.
And yet nobody will do it. It's incredible to me.
I keep saying the first 2028 Democratic primary runner for president that says, I'm going to prosecute these people and send them to The Hague has my vote.
Yeah.
Whoever says it first, whoever has the balls and the guts to stand up there and say it loud and proud, don't care who it is, I will be voting for them. Like,
this is the thing, to say it early and unapologetically before it's cool, before anybody else wants to say it, right? That is that requires courage. And that's part of why we picked the name we did, right? Because these people that were running were willing to say, yeah, of course impeachment has to happen. We must have accountability. And now what we're seeing is in some races, other candidates will kind of jump onto the impeachment trained. Like Daniel Biss, for example, he actually talked to us and he
Did
declined
he?
to join. Yeah, he was not interested. But now he's talking about impeachment because we have 3 courage candidates in that race, right? So, I mean, because it's becoming easier to say it, more people are saying it. But yeah, it's not, you have to be willing to be out in front. You got to be willing to do the right thing when everybody's looking and nobody else has the courage to do it.
That's hilarious about Daniel Biss. I mean, it's not funny, but like that is so on brand for who he is as a candidate.
Well, I gotta say, I didn't do that interview, so I don't know about the details. But yeah, his campaign talked to us, and
that's so
declined.
Funny. Well, yeah, but it is just so on brand for him because he. What's funny about it is that at a forum a couple weeks ago, he had said something about like, "I'll talk with anybody." Seems like that seems to be the case, and they just turn everybody like. He's such an interesting candidate. That's so funny.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
And I mean, we do require that the courage candidates commit to introducing articles, not enough just to vote for them, not enough just to say it's a good idea. Like we expect them to take action. And every establishment Democrat so far has decided that calculus doesn't really work for them. There are a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, that's not something they want to do. So it's not an unheard of calculation, but not a courage candidate thing, right?
Right, absolutely. So Citizens Impeachment emphasizes direct action and media pressure rather than like traditional kind of advocacy things. How do you decide where that pressure is most effective, and what does success actually look like for your campaigns?
Man. That's such a good question. Okay, so it involves a little bit of just kind of understanding how the Hill works. And I learned all of this from somebody else, so I did not come into this with this knowledge. But basically, the goal of people in office is to never take a stand so that they can be all things to all people all the time. That is the ideal position. So when you are speaking with them, what you want to listen for is the action work. They will talk all day about things that are bad and, things that are good or things that they've done, right? They'll say a lot of words, but you want to listen for, and that's why I will, right? If they don't say that piece, nothing matters. As a constituent, we have lost a lot of power in the last, over the decades. We have the right to petition our government for redress, right, of grievances in the First Amendment. And basically all of the feedback mechanisms are broken now. If you send a letter, for example, to your representative, you get put into a track called constituent correspondence. And that means that instead of an answer, what you get is a PDF like 3 months later that is linked to a keyword that maybe you used once, right? Like it's not an actual conversation.
Oh yeah, I wrote Dick Durbin a couple letters, and then he'd send me his interns probably would send me the PDF back.
Yep.
And then I'd always reply and say, I just want you to know that this form letter doesn't answer a single thing that I asked.
Correct. Yes, that is, and that happens to everybody all of the time. If they answer you, that is actually a step above just ignoring you completely, right? When you call, your phone call is supposed to be tallied up somewhere. There is theoretically a list that this office has that counts up the phone calls on given topics. When it came to the genocide in Palestine, staffers were hiding the numbers from their representatives. That tally is not being communicated to the people that can do something about it. It's just, that's broken too. And so that's why we escalated to the actual meetings where you're sitting down face to face, right? And again, you get blown off in a variety of ways. There were always myself and a constituent in there. So there were always 2 of us. And it helps to be able to hear what's actually being said. We've had staffers tell us that the rep sleeps well at night 2 different times, Deloro in Connecticut and Peters in California. To the constituent's face, we're sleeping well at night, no worries. It's truly just like a real radicalizing experience to be locked out of your rep's office and being forced to talk through an intercom and talk down to and have them ask you like, why are you here? Get out of my face, right? So it's hard to feel like there is a success around it, except that what we have seen repeatedly is every time we put new language out there, it gets picked up. When ICE invaded Chicago, we started talking about paramilitary forces. These are paramilitary forces invading American cities. that was us. And it showed up in AOC's language, and it showed up with Jim Acosta. And if you have the right words, they get out there. The other thing that we've seen that was a huge win is that Jeffries, for 10 months, Jeffries has said it's just not possible to do impeachment. It's just not a thing that we can do, right? We don't have the votes. The Republicans won't let us. Donald Trump will forbid it, whatever. He had a bunch of reasons, right? And then in January, he had to go on CNN and he had to explain Rule 9, which is the question of privilege that allows every rep to introduce these articles. He explained that to them. And then he proceeded to say that every rep does have the power to impeach, and that it's not virtue signaling, it's an actual thing that we should do to hold this government accountable.
Right.
So that's a win for us, right? And then what we see is that the Senate has started slowly answering questions. The first time we sent a request to the Senate, it was just crickets. Nobody answered at all. The second time, we got 2 people. So we're starting to move, like there's tiny little cracks here. And I guess the thing that I've learned is that they will never, not ever, admit that the citizens had any impact on what they decided to do. Because if I thought I had an impact, then I would just keep going.
Right.
Right? If I thought I had any influence at all. But what I have learned is it's really just like reliving the first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, and then you win, right? I am now in Washington, D.C. because this is the escalation. It was not enough to send the emails, and it was not enough to send the phone calls, and it's not enough to do the Zoom meetings. Now, apparently, I have to show up in your office because you are still
beating down
not
their
listening
doors.
to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so that is what we are doing. And I think the big mistake that everybody has made about this is that they still imagine that this is driven by the representatives themselves, and they are wrong. This is driven by the constituents, and there are a lot of us, and we are simply not stopping. So they need to figure out what they want to do with that.
Right. It's just frustrating that it feels like stuff has to wait until after these primaries are over, but
Do you want to know what the absolute wildest thing is to me?
Tell me.
Yeah.
I'm scared.
So like I've lived in the corporate world, right? And I've done the military thing. Like I understand hierarchies. I know how to work with power. The only thing that has moved the needle so far that I can see is being extremely mean to these people in public. I have written some mean op-eds, and that seems to get their attention, and that seems to change things. So that is what I have learned from the way that these offices work with me, is that I have to sharpen those knives. And I'm saying this to you because I'm kind of hoping it gets to somebody, because I don't want to work this way. I would prefer to work as adults and have a conversation about why this is important. But
Right.
if you need me to bully you, I can make that happen. Like,
there's a line in my Instagram bio that says cyberbully of elected officials, because it's so true. Like, that's how you get people and them to listen, is you have to like berate them a little bit. I'm like, is that your kink? Like, this is weird.
Why do we want to do this? We hear this a lot from people that are kind of just getting involved, like, oh, well, we talked to them a couple of weeks ago. We don't want to overwhelm them. We don't want to be rude or be shut out. And the only thing I can say about that is like, man, they don't listen to anything else. You have to show up, and you have to be obnoxious, and you have to get to be insistent. And it is not, I actually got corrected by this by one of those constitutional scholars that we work with the other day when I used the word bullying, right? It's just insisting. It's just insisting that they do their job and that you have your First Amendment right to petition. It's punching up, man. Like they do have power and they can use it.
Right. Absolutely. So you've framed impeachment as a nonpartisan constitutional duty rather than a political act. How do you communicate that sort of framing to people who are exhausted by partisan conflict?
Yeah. Let me just say, first of all, just like impeachment is the first step, it is not the only step, right? Like, it is a yes and. Like, man, do your mutual aid stuff. Like, go bring groceries to your neighbor, show up at Broadview and fight ICE. Like, do all of those other things, right? What we try and do is make it as easy as possible to lobby for impeachment. We write you a script. We give you an email template so that all you have to do is add this one thing that is mostly prepared to the rest of the work you're already doing. Everyone's exhausted and we're tired. And I will say that, boy, nothing has radicalized me more against the concept of a party than doing this work. Because at this point in time, I am mad at everybody. every single person took an oath. Every single person needs to uphold that oath. And that is the meaning of like nonpartisan for us. Not that we won't take a side, but we are taking the side of the Constitution. And if you can't get with us, you are on the wrong side and it's time to replace you, right? We don't actually list Democrat or Republican on the site. It truly doesn't matter to us at this point. If you're not willing to stand up and uphold your oath, I don't care. While our candidates are largely Democratic, we do have a couple independents running there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a requirement. We had one Republican, Kate Barr, who was a progressive that ran as a Republican.
Yeah, I heard about her.
Just because her district was so gerrymandered.
Right.
What we ask is that you read our code of ethics and you agree that this moment requires impeachment and, sign up for the anti-corruption platform. And that is it. That is a bar everybody should be able to get over. And yet, Here we are.
Here we are. Nobody's doing anything, and we all seem to be floundering. It's infuriating.
As much as doing this work has radicalized me against the concept of like parties and political parties, the people that I work with have been hugely uplifting. Like this is not just me. There are 40 volunteers working at different levels. We've got a woodworker and a dog trainer and a guy in e-commerce. And like, we are all showing up because we are just as sick of it. Like we are completely sick of this mentality, this team mentality.
Right. I always say like this kind of cycle of primaries is like the first time that I've gotten super involved in some of the races around me. And I always say it's the other people that I volunteer with that give me hope.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, we're all taking the time out of our day, whether you have a 9 to 5 or you're retired or whatever it is, to make good change and work for a candidate that we believe is like the best and brightest future of what's ahead. Like that's what I find the most inspiring.
Yeah. And this is like doubly true for us when it comes to the candidates, right? Like these are people, and I want to stress the being sick of it part of it, that is here for all these candidates that we work with too. There's a gentleman in Pennsylvania. His name is Tracy Hunt. He is a lawyer and he was a Republican for most of his life. He had a whole career, right? And here he is begging for approval from the Pennsylvania Democratic Party, who does not want anything to do with him because he, he was not always part of the team. And he's like, you guys, I am not trying to sneak in here for clout. I already did my career, right? I already did this. And so talking with these folks, and I mean, the people that are willing to give up the career and the life that they had in order to do this work to serve the people, that has been so inspiring compared to the absolute dismissiveness that we get from the people that are in office. It's
Well, that's
really
the other thing I've noticed in a lot of the primaries. There's a lot, like you talk about the oath that you took. There's a lot of former Army or just ex-federal workers, whether it's FBI, CIA, whatever it is, that when you ask them,
we are sick of this.
When you ask them like why you're running, most of the time their answer is the oath that I took.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
You know what? Joke's on us. We took that shit seriously.
Well, right. There's one candidate running in Illinois 9. His name is Phil Andrew. He's a former FBI agent. And he's the one that was like, the oath that I took that nobody else seems to be upholding. And I'm like, yeah, actually, you've put it so succinctly and agree.
And there are a lot of us out here that are trying to figure out how do we continue our service, right? It is, I mean, I don't know a single veteran that's not really concerned for the future of this country. Not just from the aspect of, the constitutional violations and stuff, but just strictly like our dominance as a world power is ending. We have repeatedly shot ourselves in the foot, whether it comes to allies or strategic initiatives. We have destroyed 80 years of goodwill in the space of a year.
Right. So one kind of critique of opposition movements is that they're very clear on what they oppose, but they can be less clear on what comes after that opposition is gone. For example, in this case, what happens when J.D. Vance takes the wheel if impeachment and conviction is successful? Beyond removal, what does a functioning, accountable government look like in your vision?
Like, boy, I would love to experience that once, but let me tell you about my dream. Let me tell you about the dream of responsive government, right? Okay. Let's pretend that the First Amendment actually worked and you were able to petition your government for redress of grievance, right? Like that they would answer your phone calls and talk to you. What that would look like, right, is a willingness to acknowledge the petition and the grievance. The constitutional scholar we work with every Wednesday, we do kind of conversations with him as a live on Instagram. He likes to point out that like up until like the 1940s, you could petition the government, you could bring a grievance to them and they would read it into the congressional record. They would say, here is the thing my constituents are asking for. And this doesn't mean like citizens and it doesn't mean voters. Constituents are just the people you're responsible for, the people you have an obligation to, right? And you know, that process is gone. So let's bring that back. Obama kind of tried to do it with his petition website. There's still a template there. We could bring something like that back. Man, I would make every single representative have town halls at least once a month. Show up in your district, bro. Some people haven't been there for years. Basic, super basic thing. Bring back expulsion. If you got a guy that breaks somebody's arm on the floor of the House, expel them. That is not behavior befitting a representative. You cannot do that. Have some self-respect, man. Be a part of, like, hold up the club that you want to be a part of. So those are some like basics, some real basic, like, bring up your standards of engagement as an elected official. Have some dignity, I guess.
The expulsion one's a big one because
I think so.
The only one we've gotten in recent years is George Santos for his Botox money. Like, there are people doing, sorry, like not to downplay what he did.
I forgot about that.
Not to downplay what he did at all, but like we're ejecting him over Botox money, and there's other people sitting there right now that have arguably committed worse crimes.
Yes. Well, let's talk a little bit about the pettiness of these bodies, right? Because we are not dealing with like high-minded folks, which is another thing that I had to learn. There's a story about Fetterman and how the Senate was real mad that he was wearing hoodies and shorts. And so they passed an act called the Shorts Act, which required everybody to wear a suit. And Fetterman from that point on voted from the doorway in his hoodie and shorts, just giving like a thumbs up or thumbs down. And that is when he started to break with the Democratic Party on a lot of things. Like, this is just written down because they were so concerned about decorum that they felt their most important act in a year when they passed like 3 bills, right, was to make sure that this one guy couldn't wear shorts on the floor. And then that was that. And then the guy who was wearing shorts was mad enough about that he proceeded to, I don't know, betray all his values in order to give them the finger. And that is the level of professionalism that we are dealing with here. They make a big deal about, I sent a boldly worded email to a representative today. And yeah, they were not happy about that. And they were frustrated that I called them out on not taking action. And they would like a little bit more respect, but so far they have not done anything to deserve it.
Right. Well, it's like you need to respect me first. You need to respect your constituents first. Like, respect, what is it? Respect is earned, not given.
Well, yeah, exactly, right? And some people use the word respect as like a mutual appreciation for one another, and some people use the word respect in terms of like authority, right?
Right.
You must recognize me as your authority, or you must recognize me as your equal, somebody that you can engage in a conversation between equals with. That's what I'm after.
Right, absolutely. So without litigating every case and example that you have, what do you see as the most serious or clearest grounds for impeachment right now?
Yeah. The most popular and the easiest win would probably be obstruction of justice for Epstein, because that connects everybody across the entire board. For me personally, I believe it would be treason, because Donald Trump has assembled men and he has revolutionized the government by force. He did it with the Institute for Peace in D.C., just marched folks right in there. He's done it in Chicago and in Minneapolis and in L.A. and in Maine with various federal forces that are accountable only to the federal government. And when I say treason, right, we think about, maybe espionage, somebody selling secrets or giving aid and comfort to the enemy, right? But that fact of bringing forces in over and above the objection of elected officials that are charged with the safety and security of sovereign states, that undermines the entire fabric of the concept of the federal government, of the concept of the Federation of United States, right?
Right.
It just rips that right up.
Right. So,
Yeah.
one last question. Citizens Impeachment is positioning itself as a long-term accountability project, not just a reaction to this crazy, chaotic moment that we are in right now. Where do you see Citizens Impeachment a year from now? And what will progress look like for you if Congress is still resisting to act?
Yeah. So the concept of impeachment has escaped us. For a while, we were the only people talking about it, right? And now I know of groups that are looking to target maybe Russell Vought for impeachment, and groups that are working specifically on the science side of it and focusing on RFK. And there's a number of groups that are picking up that banner. And Congress is doing it on its own as well, right? The articles of impeachment against Kristi Noem, we didn't write those. Those came from Robin Kelly. So that has taken on a life of its own. But impeachment has been something that the American people have been in favor of since April of 2025. That's when the first poll was done. That's when the majority of people said, yes, let's do this. Let's be done with this, right? And be finished with this nightmare. There are a lot of topics like that where the American people are broadly in agreement, and yet nothing happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like healthcare is another great example. People want healthcare. They want universal healthcare. That's just a thing over and over again. We see this in the poll. And that doesn't actually end up happening because you have various interests that are lobbying against the thing that Americans want. So in my opinion, what we actually need is a citizens lobby. We need a way for citizens to learn how to engage with their government. We need, of course, to make that government more responsive. And then we just need to start doing the work of bringing the things that Congress or that Americans want to government. And maybe this is what the courage concept looks like down the road, right? Once we get through impeachment, once we get through accountability, maybe the next courageous thing is to be like, oh yeah, we're doing universal health care. And that's what the next crop of courage candidates looks like, right? Because the need for people to speak up and say the brave thing before there is a guarantee of victory. That's what actually changes things. And that's really what we want to build is this, want to reconstruct that feedback loop between what it is Americans want and what their government is giving them. That would be great if we could connect those two things.
Right. Absolutely. So one last quick question for you.
Yeah.
Theoretically, all 538 members of the House and Senate come together and they're like, Keira, you can come and ask us whatever you want, but you can only ask one of us. Who's your target? I'm going to go talk to them and I'm going to I'm going to kindly harass them to get them on my side. Who's your I want that fish?
For impeachment, you mean?
To get them on your side. Who's your big target that you're I wish I could just get them to see what I see?
Oh, man. I mean, honestly, I wish one of the big progressive names would own it. I wish Jayapal would step out in front and be like, that's it, we're leading the charge. I wish AOC would come out and say, it is time to go, right? Because this is the thing that they should be doing. This is the thing that they started out with. And this is the thing their constituents believe in them for. Jayapal in particular is a really sad case. She's out in Washington and her constituent booked a meeting with her and we had a meeting with the staffer. And, this constituent said, you do so much great work. You're always out in front on all of these issues. And I respect you so much for everything that you have done. I want you to lead on this issue too. Please do. And the response that came back a couple of weeks later, which to the office's credit was a real response, right? They had a conversation about this and made a decision about their course of action. The response that came back was, well, I'm not going to do that because I want to do it from the judiciary after the midterms. So somebody has told her that's what her new job is going to be, and that's what she wants to go for. So she's not going to take a stand.
Right.
Because
I think
that's
the saddest part is we have some great progressives in office right now.
Yeah.
And what are you doing? And now we're supposed to put more progressives in? Like, that's the part that I find the most frustrating. But yeah, I think I accept that answer. That is a good one, to go after those progressives, because what are you doing?
I really just want people to like do the thing they say they're going to do, man.
Right.
And this is something I also really want to make clear, like telling us that you don't have the power. We know that's a lie. Telling us you haven't made a decision yet. We will take that under advisement. Right? But be straight with us. Tell us that you're just not going to do it because you have other priorities. And okay, we are going to adjust the way we work. There is not the need to be this, I don't know, this disrespectful about the process.
Right.
They work for us.
You know, you would think otherwise based on the way so many of them act, but
this is why we insist on it. If anybody listening wants to participate, we do lobbying training days, Citizens Impeachment /Lobby with Flair, which is a partner organization. We'll teach you how to show up in the office.
Perfect. Love that. Well, that is all that I have for you. Is there anything else that you feel like I might have missed?
No, this is a great conversation. I feel like we probably should have talked a little bit more about Illinois specifically, just because there's so much going on. But
unfortunately, this is going to come out after
the
gotcha. Primary race, so it's not. I didn't want to say too much on it because by the time it comes out, there's already going to be winners.
Yeah,
so
that makes
I don't
sense.
want to say anything that ages poorly.
Yeah,
in the case that somebody I'm like, God, they suck, and then they end up winning. But yeah. Anyways, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for coming on, and yeah, if I'll have the Citizens Impeachment socials and your website linked in the show notes so that everybody can go check those out and get involved and go to their lobbying training, which actually I might want to do now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, for sure. It's I'll send you with the link and everything so that you can take a peek at it. We also just have videos that, from previous trainings that you can look at. And it really is just show up and give them homework. Like, when can I follow up on this? And they will just not like any of that. So, yeah.
Well, I'm about to get a new senator and a new representative, so I'm going to have new people to start friendly harassing them about things. Because I know Jan Schakowsky was sick of me.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, they hear from so many people, and that gut response of, just dismissive disregard, that's got to change.
Right.
I don't know how it changes, but it's something different's got to come into play.
Right. I feel like maybe this is too like hope core of me, but I feel no matter how like doom and gloom everything else sounds, I feel like we are at the precipice of something good. Like, people are starting to say no to the politics of old, and people are starting to look at what are my representatives doing for me? When was the last time I saw them out in my community? That is what makes me like hopeful about like there's changes a-coming.
Yeah, wouldn't it be wild if we could make every House rep live in their district or something?
Don't even get me started about that.
Wouldn't that be crazy? Yeah.
Don't even get me started on that one.
There's lots to talk about, though. Yeah, thank you so much for the conversation. It's been really fun.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Current Affairs Unfiltered. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Keira. I think she's incredibly amazing and incredibly just willing to get shit done, which is exactly the kind of, normal people-led action that we need right now. As I said at the top of the episode, I'm very eager to see where Citizens Impeachment goes with this as their candidates start win. And I do think I'm going to have Keira back on once some of the primaries are done and they're getting to see more of the results for the candidates that they have endorsed and talk about what kind of the next steps are going into the general. So stay tuned to hear more from Keira on how the candidates kind of fare. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to follow, leave a review, or share it with someone who could use this information. To support this podcast, you can also subscribe to my Substack, She Knows the Score, which is linked in the show notes. And as always, if you have questions, topic suggestions, or just want to say hi, you can find me on social media at Current Affairs Unfiltered Pod on Instagram, or send me an email at currentaffairs.unfilteredpod@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. Keep asking questions, stay engaged, and tell your elected officials to impeach. I'll see you guys next week.